For those of you who might be watching in several sessions, I repeat here the view we had of the whole of the coinage so that we get some idea of the relative sizes. Let me just remind you also of one or two of the important cities that will be recurring as mint monograms on some of the later Parthian issues. We have here Ecbatana, and then just beyond it Ragai, and up in what's now Turkmenistan, Mithridat Nisa. These of course were the main drachma mints, and then finally we've got down here Seleucia Ctesiphon, which was where the majority of the tetradrachms were stuck. Although the Parthian nobles were not terribly upset by the thought of incestuous marriages, the sort of control exerted by a woman seems to have been alien to their concepts, and so Phraatokes and his mother Musa were turned off the throne, and instead we had a very short-lived king, this one here, Orodes III, whose tetradrachm we're now looking at. Again, it's a similar sort of portrait to many of the monarchs we've previously seen. The king is seated on the throne on the reverse, holding the bow and sceptre, as so very frequently on previous issues. Behind him, we can see, reading downwards, the year letters Zeta, Iota, Tor, Z-I-T, which show precisely when this coin was manufactured. Orodes was assassinated by the Parthian nobility, who then inquired from Rome whether it would be possible to have back as their monarch one of the princes who had been exiled by Phraates IV at the request of Musa. And eventually they sent this king, who became Vonones I. We see here his portrait on the tetradrachm. We also notice that there are considerable traces of overstriking, particularly around the back of the head. And these coins were nearly always actually overstruck on the tetradrachms of Phraates and Musa. The reverse bears witness to the same traces of overstriking, but you can make out that there is a Nike walking left with a palm branch over her shoulder, and in front of her there's the year date, Epsilon Kappa Tor, and in the exerg we have the month date, which is unfortunately not very clearly struck up. The drams of the monarch bear witness to his Roman upbringing, in particular the very short hair, which of course was entirely uncharacteristic of the nomadic tradition of the Arsacids. Around the head we have the legend Basileus Onones. This is in the nominative case as compared with the genitive case nearly always found on Parthian coins. The nominative case was of course always used for Roman issues. Again, something to do with his upbringing. On the reverse, we have yet again the Nike holding a palm branch, but now she's facing right, and around is the legend Basileus Onones Nikizas Artabanon. King Anones, the conqueror of Artabanus. We'll discuss who Artabanus was in a minute, but you can see in front of the Nike there is the monogram Rho Gamma, indicating that this was struck in Ragai. We also notice that the Nike is holding the palm branch in her left hand. This was relatively unusual. Until fairly recently, it was thought that there were no issues in gold by Parthian monarchs. These have recently appeared, and although some people doubt their authenticity, I am myself persuaded that they're genuine. You can see around the head we've got the same legend as we saw on the drachma, the Basileus Onones. On the reverse we have the king receiving the palm branch from the Nike figure, She's wearing a crown in this case. In front of him we have the year letters Alpha Kappa Tau, and in the exergue the month letters for Xandikos. Outside to the left, the monogram for Ragi, and around the outside of the central design, the legend as usual, but now partly in nominative and partly in the genitive, Basileus, Megalou, Vonones, Nikiphorou. So in other words, rather a mixture, but of course we know that at this particular time knowledge of Greek wasn't terribly widespread in the Parthian Empire. The Artabanus, said to have been conquered by Vonones on his coins, in fact came back for a second try, and this time he was successful, and Vonones was forced into exile. Artabanus himself, from the historian's point of view, seems to have come from Media Atropatene. He was, as it were, from the collateral branch of the Arsacid dynasty. Here we see his portrait, very different from that of Vonones, but quite similar, of course, to that of other Parthian kings. Again, receiving the palm branch from Tyche on the reverse of this tetradrachm. What is unusual is, in fact, that the head of Tyche is facing us. You can see the puffs of hair either side of the head indicating that position. Around we have a legend which isn't unfortunately very clear on this specimen, and in front of the palm branch we've got the month date Uloiou, a rather strange spelling of Loios or Oloios, a month we've met before. Artabanus followed up with a series of tetradrachms which carry a Nike and also the date letters Delta Lambda Tau in front of his head. But the portrait is similar to the one we've just seen. On the reverse we have an unusual scene. Usual, of course, insofar that it's the king receiving a palm branch from Nike. Unusual in that there's a kneeling figure in front of him proffering a diadem. This may, of course, be the defeated Vonones. Certainly it's an unusual depiction of the royal effigy. Here we have then a close-up of the defeated Artabanus. You can see very much more clearly his pleated trousers and the skirt which seemed to form part of the royal dress at this time.